It's been a long time, friends, but we're back. It's a Friday Thought Flow. Just waiting for my sidekick to join me. I don't know which one of us is the sidekick. Is she the Batman to my Robin, or am I the Batman to hers? Actually, no, I think we're more like Powder Puff Girls, which would mean we'd need a third one. I'm not really sure. Hi, Tammy. Hi, Nikki. Hi, Nicole. Hello, everybody. So good to so good to be back. It's been a long time, so let's do a little restart. Well, you know what we do. Nikki is on her way in. Hello, friend.
Hello, how are you?
I'm injured, but other than that,
Are you really?
Yeah, I had an acupuncture accident, and I don't know what's going on. I'm up on blocks today, so that's why I'm in a different space. So my lighting isn't super great, and I apologize for that.
Ah, you look fabulous.
Hey, thanks, man. How's it going in the frozen tundra? Hi, Ashley.
Oh, this weather. Where is the sun? Yes. Hey, Harmony. Oh, why do I live in the Midwest?
Why do we not all live in Maui? I just don't know.
Why?
Why?
I mean, my kids are yelling at me. Is there school? Is it a snow day? No, it's not a snow day. I mean, yes, it is a snow day, but it's not a school snow day. They're like, Mom, it's snowing. And I'm like, yes, and we have a car.
Hey, Rachel. Oh, yeah, no, they canceled school for yesterday morning here because an ice storm was coming in. I've not even bothered to look out of the window. Wait, I can see out of the bottom of my blinds, it's still snowing. As far as I'm concerned, it's unacceptable.
Yeah, it's not snowing here anymore. And, I'm like, dudes, and the day that it was snowing, I guess some cars got stuck because our school was in a little residential neighborhood and fluffy snowflakes.
Harmony's not happy about this fluffy snowflake business.
But I was like, yes, you have school. Please get in the car. While I drive you just past the front door. Please get in the car.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's right. I pick you up.
Children, I swear. Well, my son's like, hey, can I go to my friend's house? I'm like, you still have school? It's virtual, but you still have to attend it. He's like, oh, yeah, but, it'll be nothing. I'm like, you will be going? It's a lot.
It's so much.
These little whippersnappers, I say.
And, my kids don't wear coats.
I don't think any kids wear coats anymore. I think coats for old people.
They're literally like, I have a hoodie on, and I'm like, okay. I ask, just on GP, hey, you want to put that coat on? No. Okay, because you were real excited when you picked it out.
It's a lot.
And I paid my money.
Oh, I don't even buy coats anymore. I seriously don't. It was -9 the other day. He's walking up to the bus stop, texting me, it's really cold. Can you drive me? No, damn it. I could have bought you a coat, but you told me that you don't wear them. So stand outside and take your comeuppance.
So I've got my cute shoes on in lieu of your coat. Yeah, no coat. What do you call that lady? The nurse called me one day. And I'm always on high alert when I see Edison Middle School. So, you can stay.
Yeah, clients, earning
run amok.
money. Forget it. Well, you can catch the replay. Thanks for jumping in today.
The nurse calls and she's like, Nikki, because everybody knows me there. I'm on a first name basis with everybody. Orion's ears are bright red, and he could not feel my fingers. And I'm like, does he have frostbite? I'm like, get to the point. And she's like, no, no, I don't. She's like, it's not frostbite. The feeling has come back, but I just wanted to let you know because he didn't have a coat on or a hat when they went outside. And I was like, yeah, it bees that way. I'm like, I'm like, how? I'm like, he has hats. He has a coat. He doesn't have the usual 2 coats because my kids usually end up with 2 coats because, you know, I'm all about buying that one size too big. So yeah, so his ears were so red. Yes, I have pale babies. His ears were so red that she was like alarmed. And I was like, I know, it's a thing.
This is what we call life's lessons that they choose not to learn, even though we do this every damn year.
He tries to leave the house in his
I bet.
he tries to leave the house in his slides.
Listen. Now, this is what shows that we're old, right? So one day my kid comes upstairs and he's full on in his pajamas. Flannel plaid pants and a Henley. He's like, okay, I'm on my way to school. And I was like, why are you wearing your pajamas to school? He's like, well, these aren't the ones I slept in last night.
Which is important.
Like, only barely important.
Nah,
like,
that's important.
We do not wear our pajamas to school.
Oh, Misty, you know, what was it? Harvard, some university imposed a dress code. And the dress code was, you may not wear pajamas or sweats to class.
Fine. I mean, you do not need to wear your pajamas.
And obviously, this was not a dance class because, you know, dancers, you know, we get a pass. But
Truly.
But not dancers, you don't get a pass when you are interviewing and auditioning for a job in a Pilates studio. Let me just throw that out there.
Yeah, it's not Fame, nor is it Flashdance. Put on some damn pants.
Because I did once upon a time when I had the peoples who worked with me show up. She came in hair a muss, and it was like sticking to her. Yeah, she's a white girl. It's like sticking to her. So she's still sweating. Not only did she have on sweatpants, she had on sweatpants that said pink across the butt.
No.
And the writing across the butt, bleh, but pink. Les Wexner is not allowed in my studio because he is just a slimy, greasy piece of bleh.
It's no bueno.
And she goes, oh my gosh, I just came in from rehearsal. And I'm like, you came in to your interview. And I said, oh, do you want the key to the bathroom? And she's like, no, I'm ready. I was like, you got less on your butt, and you're not going to take the major hint that I just gave you. And you're sweaty. Like, I can see rehearsal sweat on you.
You know, and sometimes I feel like this is a generational thing. Sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I'm just basking in the old lady vibe. And then I'm like, no, there's just certain elements of decorum and respect that are required to actually function in this world. And that, I'm sorry, it's just never acceptable.
It's so inappropriate. Because I had a rule. I didn't have a dress code, but I said, your belly can't be out and your butt can't be out. You're not here to find a husband.
He's not here. He's not here.
I'm like, this is not studio dating. You're not here to find a husband. Because I also at one point worked in a private country club, and there were people who were Pilates instructors. Thanks, Rachel.
Bye, Rachel. See you in class this afternoon.
And they showed up to this very exclusive private club, and they were teaching, and there was cleavage. And I was like, wow, that's kind of scary. I feel like I'm going to get slapped in the face with your nipple. And a couple of them found husbands. And I was like, wow, that's a thing. Okay. All right. So, yeah, social grace and etiquette. Social frickin' grace and etiquette. Can we please just, is there a scent?
Oh no. Nikki, we're losing you. Oh, you're back. Okay, good.
Oh, did I go somewhere?
Yeah,
Oh,
you were spooling for a second,
oh,
but you're
okay.
back. Yeah, I feel like and there are certain things that I think are great, in terms of some of the formal BS that our society's been dripping in. For example, pantyhose. Pantyhose, I just don't really understand the purpose of, even when it's cold, because they do nothing when it's cold. So, seeing pantyhose go is not a bad thing. And to me, actually, it's a victory. But there are other things that I think are just signs of respect. When you go into a meeting with somebody who may potentially be your boss, you don't come in smelling like you've been rolling around in whatever with pink across your butt. I mean, I just feel like that doesn't demonstrate that you are interested in representing the business that you're interviewing for very well. You're just really representing Les Wexner.
And I think that casualness, or that casualness has extended over into how we speak to people, not being able to understand there's a caliber of conversation that needs to be had in terms of speaking to a school counselor, speaking to a teacher on a serious matter. If you're just like, I need 5 more minutes, my bad, or I'm sorry, I'm late. But when your teacher is sitting down having a conversation with you about your grade, and there needs to be an input, because it's your grade, or you're speaking to your counselor about, what steps you can take to be successful, there's a casualness in the conversation amongst youth that really doesn't bode well. Even if you work in a casual workspace, you may be so inclined to have an interaction with a client who is not your age,
right,
who isn't from your generation. And that's another thing. There's a lot of focus. We talked about this with Sissy like months ago. There's a lot of focus on what is appropriate for, like, the 18 to 24-year-old group in terms of how they view the world and how they experience the world. And I'm like, right, just an FYI, we've been here. But there, for some, not all, for sure, not all, but for some, there seems to be this, well, this is how we do things. Right. But this is how I do things as a 50-year-old woman.
right.
I'm not being disrespectful of your path, and certainly things are different. Certainly things have changed. I don't deny that. I have zero issue with it. But certain things, the path doesn't change. Certain things, you have to do this or experience this or feel this or acknowledge this to get to this. And there's a casualness. I don't know if that's considered code switching, but there's a casualness in the language and in the conversation and the communication that doesn't lend itself to circumstances that require a higher level of commitment and maturity.
Oh, but that's a tale as old as time, right? I mean,
sure.
You remember being younger and the parents or the, elders of the community saying, you whippersnappers, you don't understand this right now, but you're going to be in this position where we're speaking to you about respect right now, and you're saying your way is better. Well, just wait until you're here. And I definitely see a lot of that these days. I'm like, oh, this is what my parents were talking about. But at the same time, I think society itself is a lot more casual right now. I mean,
yes.
the what is he in our state? John Fetterman. I always forget his position, but anyway, he was the mayor of a busted up town here called Braddock. And, he came in with his Harvard education, but he came in as like a regular guy, like every man. And, super casual guy, worked with the people to help to start changing this community, has since run for a higher up level in state and got it. So when Biden was here last weekend, I guess, because, we have bridges falling out of the sky here in Pittsburgh and ancient infrastructure that, obviously nobody needs any infrastructure repair. I'd say that to the bridge that's in the bottom of the ravine at the moment. But, Fetterman is there. He's wearing a hoodie and a pair of sweatshorts. And.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, with the president?
Yes. And, again, I love standing out on the edge of fashion or whatever it is and saying, I'm going to show up my way. But that's an instance where I don't care who you are. I don't care what you are. There's a level of respect that needs to show up when you're dealing with situations that are that important. We're talking about
how old is he?
Probably a little older than you and me, I think.
Okay. So old enough to know better.
Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. He's got like 4 kids or something like that.
Well, and I think, and, obviously, feel free to weigh in. And I think, a really nice dark pair of denim with a great shoe and a jacket. Did it have to be a suit? I don't know. But again, with how free we are with fashion these days and what is acceptable, you're not, what do you call it? Skateboarding around the Google offices, but there's something in between meeting your president and meeting the people that you work with on a daily basis, and even more so putting your face out there, because before the president can even come to discuss the infrastructure, the bridge fell. And
yeah.
Apparently that bus was the millionth straw. But then we see this behavior mimicked by older people. And I do think, I do think that you have to appear in certain garb. We had a luncheon when I was teaching at Performing Arts High School with, why did her name just leave my head? And her name is your name, Misty, ballet dancer.
Oakland.
Yes, thank you. And it was a luncheon with her. And so we had to tell these girls, it's a luncheon. So to you and I, we know that means a dress below your knee, or at least at your knee, not above your knee. We had to explain it in a way. What would you wear if you were going to a party with your friends? And they'd be like, oh, and we let them, it's like, you can't wear that. You can't, this is not the club.
Right.
This is, like, we had to say it in those terms. We had to think about how they would view it, because in their minds,
it's just dressing up.
Correct.
It's not dressing appropriately.
Correct. And we had to go on, thank God for technology. We had to, go on to phones and say, this is a dress that you might wear to a luncheon. Please ask us if you need help putting this together, because it's midday. They don't know social grace and etiquette. They don't know a dress to wear to a luncheon versus after 5 versus evening. They don't know these things.
And P.S., we're not saying that they have to wear a dress because they're women. They can wear a nice pair of slacks.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that they can choose to wear.
Sure.
But it has to be something that is socially appropriate for the event at hand.
Correct.
Meeting your president, no assless chaps.
Yeah, I mean, and again, when we talk about social grace and etiquette, it's we laugh, but it's definitely it's a thing. And I like to always think about an opportunity is only an opportunity if you know that it exists. And there are so many circumstances where someone gave someone the extra special post-it note and you didn't get it because you didn't realize that every circumstance is a potential opportunity.
Right.
And whether it was what came out of your mouth, whether it was that TikTok video that you just had to watch, whether it was what you were wearing. And my son just had this experience. He just had this debate in 8th grade, and his team actually won. Um, his teacher was like, "Yeah, you need to dress for the occasion." And he's like, "Oh, Mom, she wants us to dress up. She wants us in slacks."
Dun, dun, dun.
And he said it like, slacks was.
Oh, Martin, it's okay though. We'll pivot in a second. It'll
You
start
need to type in there what was inopportune. So he was like, "Well, I'm gonna wear my white hoodie and my new white sweats," and he's like, and he has his pair of Jordans that my brother gave him, and I was like, okay. And then it was Monday, and he was like, "Oh, my teacher and this outfit." Okay. And then it was Tuesday. "Mom, I don't have anything to wear." When is the debate? Today. Fourth period. And I was like, "Oh, fourth period. Oh, Tuesday? Yeah, I'll be teaching Miss Sally."
Lots of luck.
And he's like, "Well, can I be late for school?" And I was like, "But what is that going to garner you? Like, I don't understand." And he's like, "Well, maybe I can run down to the store."
Assless chaps.
Oh.
Okay, maybe that was inopportune.
So
I'll give you that.
he borrowed his brother's dress slacks and shirt, button down. His teacher made mention to email me because he dressed, and she's like, "Oh, he looked so nice," and his team won the debate. I was done with it. I was like, "You like it, I love it." The white hoodie and the white sweatpants with the perfect white Jordans, boom, shaka. You like it, I love it. But he got his mind right. He's like, "She just won't let it go." And I was like,
Yeah, I mean, it's just not the time to break convention. That is not the time. That is not the event. And quite frankly, first of all, as a lover of speech and debate, of course, I was that kind of kid. But, I think that particular type of event teaches kids a lot. And
yes.
the fashion part of it is a big deal, and you can always tell the kids at home who have better guidance at home in terms of these fashion choices versus the ones that don't, or better coaching or whatever it is. But the seeds are sown young.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it starts. Then you get to be our age and you really don't care. But, you have to earn that place, I think.
Well, there's also a group of people who have had conversations with him, all unbeknownst to each other, who think that he should be in speech and debate.
Who, Aries?
Yeah.
I mean,
Aaron has said it. Tasha was just like, "No, that's what he's gonna do. Let me know. Did you sign him up yet?" Because we got like all this stuff for incoming freshmen, because we have 2 incoming freshmen, and so we were getting all this stuff for the freshmen, and we've done orientation. And so she's like, "Did you sign him up for speech? And what is that? Where is that? Did you?" She's like, "Because I'm gonna sign him up. I'm just gonna be you and sign him up." And I was like, so there's literally like this group of people completely unrelated who are convinced that Aries should do speech and debate, and I'm like, "Dude, that's a black or navy slack with a white shirt and a tie. That's They might have eased up on the jacket, but no, I hate school uniforms,
They might
Martin.
have
No,
eased up on the tie, but I don't know about the jacket part.
one or the other.
Yes,
I hate
school
school uniforms.
uniforms. That's an interesting discussion because I think one of the biggest problems that we have in school in general is that people don't see these kids as individuals. They don't see them as thinking, breathing, sentient beings. And when we put them all in the same outfit, it eliminates some of that social pressure from their angle. But I think it makes it easier for the administration to look at them and say, kid
Lynne.
237 is, misbehaving. And it was really kid number 246, but who can tell the difference? You know what I mean? Harrison went to a school where uniforms were required for a while, and I really liked it when he was younger. Let me tell you, I liked it because it was cheap. But, as he got older and his personality really started to shine, I will tell you, I didn't like it for him. And again, we talk about these teachers and the way they've got so much to deal with in a lot of ways. In other ways, they don't want to deal with certain things. I think they have to see kids as who they are. And a lot of that is expressed in how they dress and the jewelry that they wear.
Mm-hmm.
Or as Harrison told me the other day, I think he told me it was his drip.
It's also, I think, and this is something that people don't consider because my boys were in a uniform school as well at one point. There is an ease to it for sure. There is an ease, but there is also the socioeconomic differences. Whereas you think they might be minimized, in a lot of ways they are magnified, because now the kid is, now you're the one thing that you can choose, which is typically your shoes, that becomes magnified. So you really start to see. So whereas you might see 5 kids walking around in like black sweats, black hoodie, gym shoes. This kid's black sweats might be from Target. This kid's might be Champion. This kid's might be DKNY, right? But they're all black sweats. When you can only choose certain things, now you're drawn to the kid who gets the new pair of Jordans every month, or the new pair of, that gets kind of thrown into the mosh pit when the kids get to wear what they want to wear. Because now it's not like you have to go to the Woolworth or the Kmart and get the Wrangler jeans. Now jeans are so amorphous in terms of, who made them and who got them, and nobody wears those ugly ass, sorry, True Religion jeans anymore.
Thank goodness that True Religion and affliction have gone away.
And so, but you start to get, you start to see where people have, you do, it's there because I see it sometimes. I think we're a little more programmed based on age to know what to look for when, you can tell that someone is, from a more, a less affluent or, just lesser than in terms of financial ability. You do see it.
Yeah, I see. Do you see what Martin put here in the text?
Mm-hmm.
He says he disagreed, and he went to uniform school, and the personalities did shine. No jewelry restrictions, by the way. Yeah, definitely. Hi, Robin. No jewelry restrictions, and typically no restrictions on shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with Nikki's point too. Those shoes then become a really big factor. So now people want, these kids want $250 Jordans, whereas before it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. So
Mm-hmm.
I get what you're saying. I think Martin's point is sound too, though.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the administration. It depends on so many things. And listen, Martin, you're in Canada. You're civilized up there. So I'm going to just leave it at that. I'm going to pivot this conversation, Nikki, because exactly, swerve. That means something too, but I'm not exactly sure. Just know Harrison told me something about swerving the other day. So this is
We need Harrison with a piece of
with
paper walking,
yes,
walking
exactly, with
by.
a cue card. What my mom really means is, so there was, oh, and so glad Robin Brody is here, because there's been so many controversies going on this week. It's Black History Month. It's also, is this Holocaust Memory Month, or was that last month? I can't remember. Lots of things on my mind about this. But our friend, I almost said Whitney Houston. I meant Whoopigoldberg. I promise I haven't been talking to Whitney Houston, but our friend Whoopigoldberg has gotten herself into a bit of a quagmire because of a statement that she made on The View. And I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on it, Nikki, and Robin's here. And, Robin, if you would want to maybe even pop in and join us so we can have a nice warm debate, I mean, just make sure you've got pants on. In case your laptop falls or something, I'm just saying. But just let us know and we'll bring you up. But basically, and the long and short of it is, they were talking about the Holocaust, and Whoopi said something about how the Holocaust wasn't about race, about the Holocaust, how the Holocaust was much more about evil and man doing bad things to men. And I think it's a really interesting, hi Meryl, welcome. I think it's a really interesting conundrum in both the way the situation's been handled and in Whoopi's presentation of her information. So I will tell you this, and Harmony, if you can pull that up, that would be great, so people don't think that we're just randomly making things up here, because I was just a second ago talking to Whitney Houston, apparently. So what I believe that Whoopi was trying to say, Whoopi was looking at race in terms of the way we see race in the United States as a physical presentation of race. And race is different in other countries. So here in the United States, race tends to only really, Black people, or the lesser races we would be considered in a lot of cases, that only really encompasses, you're white or you're Black. If you come in from India and you're way darker than me, you're still checking white on the form if it's white or Black only. My brother-in-law is Lebanese. He has to check the white box sometimes because those are the only choices that he gets to pick. But he's Lebanese, and people from Lebanon are not white. When we look at the conundrum that Whoopi was in, she wasn't, in my opinion, looking at race in terms of Hitler's perspective, which was the master race, versus all of the rest of the people who were beneath there.
There we go. I said the Holocaust wasn't about race and wasn't said about man's inhumanity to man. But it is indeed about race, because Hitler and the Nazis considered Jews to be an inferior race.
Right. So,
I read that, and because Whoopi always says and does what some people feel to be controversial things. Like, it was a controversy for her to date Ted Danson, even though nobody knew she was dating Ted Danson. And then they were over before. And she does these kind of, she does and says these kind of controversial things, but I don't think that she is saying them to be over the top and outlandish. She speaks from her experience.
Yes.
And her experience as a Black woman, and a Black woman who looks the way that she does.
Right.
Because long time ago, when she did Color Purple, it was such a there were so many aspects of that movie that I felt like she was living a part of her life as how she had lived in terms of the way that she looks, um, and just how, I mean, there's a lot of colorism components to the color purple. So she speaks and says things from her experience. Now, she's not the standard of beauty as this country has a defined standard of beauty. She is actually quite the opposite. She has an experience as being low woman on the totem pole. And I had this conversation with a very dear friend of mine. I've known her for over 10 years. She's an Orthodox Jewish woman who is the only girl in a family of 10 kids. And she said to me, and this woman is 70 years old, she said to me, but at the end of the day, Nikki, I'm still a white woman. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm looking for these incredibly inflammatory comments made by Whoopi Goldberg that caused her to have
warranted her suspension.
A suspension for 2 weeks too. They gave her a timeout like she was 5 years old. They told her to go sit in the corner and think about what she did. And I'm looking for these toxic words. And I read them and I was like, well, maybe I missed it.
Where are they?
And the thing that really kind of irked me was her comment was not to say or to deny anything that happened to the Jewish people. It was to argue, to have a discussion, to have an opinion on a talk show where they discuss
opinions.
Was about man's inhumanity to man.
But it was an opinion that wasn't based on facts as they really are, unfortunately for Whoopi.
That is true too.
Yeah. Yes. Which is why Robin Brody, thank you, Robin.
And for those of you that don't know Robin Brody,
please,
Robin
yes.
Brody is amazing. She is my friend. She is on this journey in this world, being an ally and a co-conspirator and a rabble rouser. And thank you, Robin, for just jumping in at the last minute. I would love to hear about how this lands for you, primarily as a person of Jewish heritage, but also how it lands for you as an American versus how it can be seen in other ways.
You know, it's interesting. She and I had said this to Misty, that she knew the facts, but she didn't understand the facts.
Right.
It really is that simple. And I can't profess to know what you and Nikki go through in life because I'm white. I'm not a black woman. And I don't expect a non-Jew, somebody who's white or black, to understand the mentality behind a generation like mine, at least, that grew up with the we shall never forget.
Mm-hmm.
It was ingrained in us, and I had shared this with Misty. We saw films when I was 8 years old of the black and white films of the liberation of the camps and dead bodies being shoveled with bulldozers into mass graves. I did not have a, oh my God, I can't believe she said that moment. I had a, Whoopi. Like, take a step back.
You said it out loud.
Like, okay. Fact check yourself. She unfortunately said it twice that day. She also said it on the Stephen Colbert show. So she kind of shot herself in the foot twice. But she offered an incredible and humble and sincere apology and had a rabbi on the next day to discuss exactly the Jewish mentality when it comes to the Holocaust and what Hitler's thoughts were. Hitler said that he was part of the master race and Jews were not. But he also, and this is a problem as a Jew that I have, and this is a very unpopular stance that I have, 12 million people died in the Holocaust. The largest group was 6 million Jews. But within that group were blacks, gypsies, professors, artists,
Homosexuals,
anybody who did not fit that mold. So that was kind of like where I get that she didn't understand. It's not, it is about race. Jews, when I was growing up, and people would say to me, where are you from? Or what are you? Is what we always ask, what are you? And I would say Jewish. And people go, no. I mean, like, are you Russian? Are you Austrian? I was like, no, I'm Jewish. This is how we were raised. So in many ways, for me, it's just who I was. It wasn't a question of race. I understand what she said, and I understand the mistake she made. She understands it as well.
I just want
he
to
understands
respond
it as
to,
well.
yeah, I just want to respond to Flow Boy. It's not we're not comparing two different atrocities. That's not what we're doing. It's not a denial that we will never know the amount, because we don't even know how many people perished in Middle Passage, or we don't even know how many people started off. And then of course so we're not comparing one atrocity to another. We are absolutely unequivocally not comparing one atrocity to another. It is not a denial that we know that there is the degradation of Black, brown people in this country. We know that. That's not the discussion. And I'm not being off-putting, but I just wanted to make sure that Flow Boy knew that we are not comparing two atrocities. We're simply discussing the conversation, the 2-week suspension of Whoopi Goldberg based on what she said, and how overtly inflammatory it appeared. But there didn't seem, I started off by saying she has an experience that she has lived. As a Black woman, she has an experience that she has lived. And so that's what Robin is discussing right now.
Yes.
It's not a question of whose Holocaust is better than anybody else's Holocaust. It's a question of we've all experienced genocide, mass genocide in many, many ways that are very different. My history is very different than your history, but they all have genocide in common. That's the one thing we do have in common. As far as Whoopi goes, she made a big mistake. Did I take it as she called me? I mean, I grew up in a community where there was rabid anti-Semitism. In first grade, I was called a kike, a dirty Jew, a Jew whore. It did not impact me the way that did then. And it would not impact me. If she had said, those kikes deserved it, you have a problem.
That's problematic. Yeah.
This was a true, honest mistake. And I have a real problem with the suspension, because they could have taken this, kept her on, and had many meaningful conversations, not only about the Holocaust, but about allyship, about racism in this country, about how people perceive each other in this country, the misconceptions. They've done a terrible disservice to the community, all communities, not just the Jewish community.
And to that show, I think,
yes.
The thing about The View, and I heard this, maybe it was a year ago or so, but somebody said that The View is actually one of the most influential shows on television, which is downright terrifying for a lot of reasons. But at the same time, if people are willing to listen to this panel of women, first of all, that are all from different experiences, secondly, and bring something very interesting to the conversation, a certain richness that a lot of people aren't going to get in their native homogenized communities, then I say have at it. Allow them to lead in that way. And are they going to get it right all the time? No, because it's a conversation. And in conversation, we should be sharing ideas. I learned something from each and every ThoughtFLOW. Somebody put some pearl or nugget into the chat. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's something I'm going to look up and chew over for a bit so I can understand it better. And ABC, in a knee-jerk reaction, has taken that from the community. And I think it could hurt the show overall, because I think those who are fans of each and every one of those hosts, and Whoopi has a lot of fans, may be scarred enough by this not to return.
The thing is that Judaism is a race to many Jews, because you have Jews from all over the world. You have the Ladinos, you have the Sephardic, the Ashkenazi, the Falashim, who happen to be black.
Yeah.
So I think what happened is, and there are so many different sects of Judaism, sects, that people don't realize that each sect has its own dynamic unto its own. Mm-hmm. I'm from a Reform, which is very liberal. My sense is that the people who are a little bit more right-leaning were the ones that were screaming the loudest about this.
Of course.
Well, she's
sorry,
always had, that's okay. She's always had, look, people were claiming she appropriated a Jewish name. I always thought it was amazing that she took the name Goldberg. I thought it was brilliant. She's always had a good relationship with the Jewish community. She's been an ally to the Jewish community, and she made a dumb mistake. I understand what she said about it's man's inhumanity against humanity. And she wasn't wrong in that. It just was a very broad scope. Mm-hmm. And she left out a couple of things.
And number one, the name of the show is The View. Mm-hmm. I always took that to mean point of view.
Not The View of Manhattan.
Perhaps I was wrong. And I feel like the way that they came down on her, it was so overt, because she has sat in a position where white people have said just atrocious things, and they just get to, skip to my loo back to their job the next day. And based on what Misty just said, like, open this up. Let's open this up. Let's take this and make it a learning experience, mm-hmm. right? Whoopi would have been so down for that. I don't know her. I don't know. I feel very comfortable saying that she would have been, well, based on her actions that followed, she would have been so down for that. And it's like, for me, the thing was, oh yeah, she probably shouldn't have said that like that. But then it was just like, dang, it's so much worse when you make a mistake like that as a Black woman.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
And
the punishment is always harsher.
Not as a Black woman who looks like Sally Richardson or Nicole Ari Parker or Vanessa Williams. And yes, I am speaking of very fair-skinned Black women. No, she mm-hmm. did. That's a different level of mistake. That's a different level of recoup and consequence. She got so downtrodden on, and I was like, and I'm not making light of this, and I'm really, really not, because one of my best friends is Jewish, and I'm going to keep saying that, and yes, I know what it sounds like. I know what it sounds like, but it's the truth.
Oh, I've heard this one before.
It's the truth.
One of my best friends is Jewish.
So, I don't have that many. So, you're looking at one of the other ones. She Black. So, but, it just feels like, I stood in a ballet class, and I'm going to say his name out loud, Oren Cain, who danced with Maria Talchief in Oren Cain. Yes, he was Jewish. I stood in a ballet class for a long time while I was in high school with that man believing that the Black body was not meant for ballet. Mm-hmm. And you just had to suck that crap up. And he got to say that. And my mom paid money because it was a private school. So he got to say that. And I just sucked it up and was like, okay, I'll just hope that I don't get this teacher next year. But she got so downtrodden on that. And there's been so much other stuff that she's endured as a Black female that I think that ABC's handling of it was bleh, it was puke-worthy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point there, Nikki, because at the end of the day, there's this kind of, well, we can just say whatever we want to and about Black people and people of color and Jews, even when it suits us. And they just kind of have to roll with it. But heaven forbid they step across that line. Let's be real. I forgot the guy's name, but he just took a position at Georgetown Law. And he was talking about what Biden said as about appointing the next Supreme Court justice. And
Right.
he's saying, so Biden has just decided that he's going to appoint this woman that is inferior. He should be picking somebody else who is of Asian or South Asian descent, which means they would still check the box, this guy said. I mean, it just kept going and going. But instead, Biden wants to pick this person who he never acknowledged one of her attributes, which Biden absolutely did do. He started that whole discussion talking about how qualified this person is, all of the things that she's done, how she is a superior adherent and practitioner of the law. But this person, his whole point was she is inferior because she is Black. And he got to say that. And as far as I can see, he still has his job with Georgetown, though people are asking him to step down. Again, if we want to play this game, then play it.
Let's play the game.
But
let's play the
hold
game.
everybody to the same standard. Don't give me this whole, it's cancel culture when it's happening to this group of people, but on this group of people, it's justice. That's not right. I want to address this too. Meryl here says Whoopi is going to quit. For the love of Pete, I hope she doesn't. And if they try to force her out, I hope she digs her heels in and makes it known that they're trying to force her out. Because these things don't change until somebody takes a stand. And Whoopi has been in showbiz for, here I am, like,
Flow boy, Lord.
Whoopi has been in showbiz for a long time. Like Nikki said, she has endured a lot. If you recall why she and Ted Danson split up, it was because her fiance was doing blackface. And that was okay.
It really was.
She endured a lot too. She made a statement that was misinformed, but she would have had the conversation continued, and she's going to regardless.
And she didn't just go, no, this is what I feel. This is what I said. She didn't, and she didn't wait weeks.
No, she
addressed
it immediately.
Other people are like, well, you know, this doesn't look so good. You might lose your job. You might have to step down. Freaking 3 months later,
she took care of it on her own.
And I'm like, and there's no, and it's like,
you know,
it's so frustrating because it just damned if you do, damned if you don't. And she sits on that show with knowing who she is and how she is and having conversations and trying to engage and trying to give information. And she's still just another Black woman.
Mm-hmm. She has to listen to Meghan McCain, for God's sake. Nobody should have to listen to Meghan McCain. Go ahead, Robin.
No, what I was going to say is, you know, about not knowing the facts. And even when you do know the facts, and I made a terrible mistake about, I guess, a year and a half ago. It was a different mentorship group that I had kind of dabbled in. And I'd had an experience at work where one of the instructors, I teach Pilates, it was an instructor in a dance class. And she used music that was explicit. And she's also a member of QAnon. And used the N. Yeah. She was at the march and she's proud. And the song had the N-word in it. And there was one Black woman in the class and nobody said anything. So I filed a complaint only because I overheard, and I looked and I saw the whole thing. When I was in this mentorship group, we were writing stories for each other, and I wrote out the N-word in quotes. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. I know it's a word I'll never, ever use, and I've never used it. I got my head handed to me. But I apologized immediately. I knew the fact. I didn't understand that was not acceptable.
Wait, you're not supposed to write it out even though you were describing a circumstance? Wait, yes. Okay, I don't know the rules.
I mean,
I don't know the rules.
Apparently this person had the rule. But what I'm saying is that we make mistakes. Whether that was a big deal or not, I'm over it. It's fine, whatever. But again, she made a mistake. She owned it. They could have kept her on the show and had so many conversations, as we said earlier, about racism, bias, bigotry, perceived bias. What is bias? Half the world doesn't even know what it is, and half the bigots don't even think they're bigots.
Right.
So I need to go back because I don't know this, right? I don't know this. And so here's a little interesting thing. I am not a believer or disbeliever in God, Robin. But my friend, my Jewish friend,
your one Jewish friend,
when she writes things, and I can say all the names, and when she writes things, she puts a slash. She doesn't write out the word God. She puts G
Yes.
slash, and so I started writing it like that. And I will send her things, and she's like, "Oh, why do you write that like that?" I'm like, "Oh, because you do, and I want to be respectful."
Yeah.
You know, so you write it like that, and she knows. I'm like, whatever, God, Allah, Buddha, random Hindu goddesses. You know, bring them all. So I didn't know that you weren't supposed to write that out because you weren't writing something, calling someone that. You were explaining a circumstance. I would have read that,
Right.
and that would not have bothered me because I would have been like, "This is the context,"
right?
And I'd have been like, "Oh," and so I just, damned if you do, damned if you don't. They're going to be offended because you wrote it out, explaining a circumstance using the context. But all those people in that class, hell's bells, nobody was offended, and it's just full on. And because that was not a context explaining anything, that was a derogatory or term of endearment or whatever inappropriate use of the N word. Like those are the things that I'm like, what are the freaking rules?
Right. The freaking rules are know your facts and understand them. That's really the bottom line in the end. It's just know the facts and understand them.
And if you don't know them or understand them and you make a mistake, you own it.
Right, exactly. And if, you do what I did and that's offensive to somebody, I get that. It might not have been offensive to you or Misty or somebody else because of the context it was given in, but it bothered this person. And to me, then, if it bothers you, I'll own it. That's it. I learned a lesson. Don't write it out, even if it's in context.
But what offends me about what you're talking about with this situation is that you got your head handed to you. What was the resolution of the initial incident that you had to report in the first place? People do this all the time.
Let's deflect.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Apparently, the company that I work for, who shall remain nameless, has rules and regulations about the type of music that they do allow to be played. And that is against the rules. You're not permitted to play any explicit music. So she was written up.
But how many people...
Privately, silently, it was a write-up. There was no discussion of, hey, just a reminder for everybody. That's my point. Nobody learns from that.
Nope. She's still working there. I had pushed very hard for her to be fired.
She didn't get suspended.
No, I pushed for her to be fired.
Oh.
To me, that was a fireable offense. I was like, you don't get suspended because you're
because you're grown. Because you grown.
Yep.
Because you grown.
Don't send me to write on the chalkboard.
Exactly.
Because you're grown and because you should know better. But let's go back to the beginning of our conversation. It's too freaking casual.
Yep.
And people don't know where the lines are anymore. And even if they do know, because a lot of people actually do know where the lines are, but they just bring their own dry eraser and then they just start erasing the lines. And it's like, oh, nobody's saying anything.
That's entitlement. That's entitlement.
And it's also just a casualness of, should I play this song because I know the lyrics, because I know my playlist, because I made my playlist. Mm-hmm. And so I know that those words are in there, and you don't know who's necessarily going to be in your class. And it's like, people just don't care.
It's apathy. It's plain and simple. It's apathy, which is dangerous. Apathy is as bad as hate. It is as bad as hate.
It is so dangerous. And we keep, even with my kids, we have these conversations. I'm going to sigh. I'm just going to sweep just for a second because my bonus son, he said, yeah, this girl like slapped my butt and told me that I was thick. And I was like, what? I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, she slapped my butt and told me I was thick. And I was like, I was like, and then what did you do? And he's like, I told her not to do that again. And I was like, and then what did you do? And he just kind of looked at me and I was like, that's sexual harassment.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, because you could not do that. You could not do that.
Mm-hmm.
You could not slap some girl in the butt and then talk about, and I didn't even go where thick was. I was like, Lord, Black baby Jesus, there's 2 teenage boys in my house, and I didn't even want to know what thick meant in that moment in time.
I think it means like real thick and juicy.
But
you know, to quote the immortal words of Sir Mix-a-Lot.
But like, are you like, does that mean genitalia? Because no, she didn't say that. Okay, so like, just like, oh, you, sorry, Robin.
Like,
Ryan, are you on here? Because you
like,
could be learning some stuff.
Butt cheeks,
Okay,
luscious.
okay, like you juicy. Okay, but I was like, that's so inappropriate. I was like, don't you ever let some girl, and you guys know how I feel about white girls and Black boys, and you know, I didn't even go there. I was like, was she white? And I was like, must not come out of my mouth because the wind. I was like, ah! But I was like, don't you ever let that slide. I'm like, ever, never. I said, because that is sexual harassment, and women are taught that in some respects. It's a good comment.
Thank you, Flow Boy, for the translation.
I'm like, what's that mean? You thick? You thick? And I was like, I know what it means. I've heard guys say it to girls, but I'm like, I have to teach my boys that you are not food for fodder for any girl to come your way. And it's like, because there's so many ramifications behind that. And there's so many ways it could go. And it was just, I'm like, it's too casual.
And not to mention, if it's seen by somebody on the outside, right? Somebody with an axe to grind, some teacher that just has issues, it could still, even though that's super simple kid behavior, that could very easily have been interpreted in a different way and still turned back to be his issue.
Yeah.
It's not like he put her hand on his tush.
No.
You know, and it sounds so ridiculously stupid, for lack of a better term, to think of it that way. Mm-hmm. But when you look at, here's an example, Emmett Till, there you go. There's one. Mm-hmm. The impetus for the Tulsa race riot. That was another situation potentially similar to this. But if you look at just, I think it was about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, a little boy, 7 years old, was suspended for a week from his school in Colorado for telling a girl how good looking she was. That was considered sexual harassment. This 7-year-old was suspended. So, and the 7-year-old was Black, by the way. His
surprise.
You know, so, you know, we cannot consider these little things to be simple, basic kid behaviors when there are people on the sidelines looking to weaponize. Mm-hmm.
Listen, as a mother of a son, I had these conversations with him. He's 38 years old. When he was 12. Mm-hmm. But I had to have them for just the simple reason of sexual harassment. And, you know, do it. And I could not imagine having a Black son and having to have the conversation, because the ramifications for your son, as opposed to my son, it's apples and oranges. Yeah. It's a piece of cake. My son, it would have been a cakewalk. It would have been, okay, let's go talk to the principal, you know.
Another, Harmony will probably find this. Maybe like 10 years ago, a Black kid rising football star, was going to get a scholarship to a university. White girl cried rape. He was convicted, served 5 years, came out. She won a suit from the school because the school district didn't keep her safe from the big black football player. And when he got out, she wanted to meet with him, and he recorded her admitting to making it up. He can't go back. He can't ever be a senior football player in high school with a scholarship to go to university to play football. He can't ever get that back. Ever.
And it's on his record. He can't do a lot of things.
And so, and she got money. She got money. And so when we talk about this casualness, boom, shaka, harmony, pew, pew,
Harmony,
pew, 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 boom, shaka. But it's like, you can't get that back. You can't ever have that experience again. She went off and had her experience, and had her experience with some extra coin in her pocket. And when we talk about this casualness, because my son thought that I was mad at him, I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I'm like, this is not okay. Everything gets reported.
But it probably felt like you were mad at him because you get this wash, right, of every emotion you can find. It's fear, it's loathing, it's anger, it's all of these things because, you know, we've lived long enough to see
right
how things can go wrong.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's the experience. And that's why when I read what Whoopi said, I read it. So I didn't actually see it. I read it. And I was like, wow, I don't even know if as a Black woman, because she's older, but there are just certain things, especially because she's an actress, there are just so many things that she's experienced that led her to that point to say those words. And it's like, you look at it from the perspective of a 15-year-old. I just got to high school. I'm in my freshman year and I'm playing all my sports and I'm doing all my stuff. And I'm like, damn, he's already had a greater level of experience than the average white kid his age, mm-hmm. because of the color of his skin. And you just, the over-sexualization of young Black girls, the Black girl who was in the Little League World Series, and some white guy, it was like a 13, 14-year-old kid, some white guy freaking calls her like a slut because she won, because she was good. She's a freaking kid. And that's how she's viewed. That's her experience. She does this amazing thing. Black girl in the World Series, baseball. Some white guy freaking calls her a slut. So she gets to have this amazing moment and shine bright attached to this really nasty thing. That's her experience. And I'm sure she got stuff before that. So now we're taking this, and this is already like 6, 7 years old. And I just keep going back to Whoopi, who is what? She in her 60s, late 60s?
Where's Harmony?
Yeah, right. Harmony will tell us momentarily.
And we don't get that. And we don't get Robin, which is, yeah, see, she knew, because that's Harmony. We don't get what the Black race doesn't get what you get, Robin, where you're talking about. There was a collective, there was a camaraderie amongst Jewish people, and in a lot of ways there still is, for sure, but I'm speaking specifically about, you know, your generation as you spoke.
Yeah.
There was a coming together.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have that. We don't have that. At that time, Black families were being ripped apart.
Yes.
We didn't get to come together. Even if we tried to come together, we were ripped apart.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think as a Jew, it came out of, the persecution in Europe, throughout the world, that everybody fled and all had these little, they call them shtetls that they lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And when we came here, well, not we, but when my family came here, it became very important because Judaism is our religion.
Mm-hmm.
Judaism is a way of life. It's not just a religion.
Mm-hmm.
It really,
The culture.
it is a culture. It's, for me, growing up, I was told it was my nationality.
Mm-hmm.
That's changed a lot, but that was how I was raised. I can only speak from my own experience.
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
So we had that, and we formed numbers and stood together because we did not have people when we came here ripping us apart. We didn't have to deal with that. We had communities like Skokie where they tried to have Nazi marches, where they had I think they had the highest amount of Holocaust survivors living in Skokie at the time. But we've been well protected in numbers. The Black community doesn't have that. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was back in the 70s. They tried to have a Nazi march on the town.
You are correct. Skokie, for those of you guys who don't know, Skokie is a North Shore suburb in Illinois. It is the next town over from Evanston where Northwestern is, just to give you, if you know your Big Ten school. So yeah, Skokie is a North Shore, just keep following Lake Michigan all the way up past Evanston or just before Evanston, one of those, where Northwestern is. It's a very challenging. Go ahead.
Well, P.S. the bottom line is that the community was protected. The community was not protected because it was under the Freedom of Speech Act that the Nazis are allowed to march, just like the KKK can march wherever they want. However, what happened was they were refused for some technicality the petition to march, and they ended up having a march like 20 miles away in a town where nobody lived.
Good.
But so we do have, it's not a luxury. It's just the way the Jews have structured their lives. We're in many ways, if you look at the communities, the Hasidic communities, the Lubavitches, they're very insular. That's it. There are no outsiders. I'm considered an outsider.
Right.
Yeah. I get, and it's, and again, it's the thing that's challenging is this is a conversation. We're having like our own little conversation. This is a conversation. Robin's like, you're giving. I've actually never spoken with you, so I'm like, oh, she's so nice.
You've never spoken to Robin? Oh my God.
No.
And so, you're giving. You're having a conversation. You're explaining from your perspective as a Jew, based on your experience in terms of how you grew up. It's a conversation. It's giving people information. It's not going, oh, that's just your opinion and you're, and that's what's lacking, which is why Misty and I do this. That's what's lacking. And it's so necessary because I can hear about your experience. I can hear about what your family felt was important. I can hear that. And it's still rooted in just being human.
Yeah.
And I saw Flowboy write that and I was like, no, we are not comparing atrocities. I just want to be clear because I was like, that's written and I don't know what the tone is behind that, but let me just say what is the conversation and what is not the conversation. And at the end of the day, in this conversation, we find that there are more similarities than dissimilarities.
And that's what bothers me about the suspension, because that's what the takeaway could have been from all this. And instead, my takeaway is another Black woman is being censured. Go back to burning your books, folks, because you really have no rights. That's what galls me about the whole thing.
And my son is reading The Giver right now. I'm like, yes, baby, get all those banned books. Let's go get some banned books.
That's right. Go pick up Mouse. Good luck finding a copy.
Well, that's why I think your statement is so important, Robin, is that we're back to banning books like left and right crazy town.
Right.
And so, seeing as we're not allowed to, I don't know if anyone caught Trevor Noah. I think it was last night, but he said, great, it's Black History Month. This is the way it's going to go now in schools. Let's have a discussion about Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a runaway slave. The end. And now we're in America and everything is great. You can't, if you start censoring speech to the point where you cannot get the whole story, this is how parts of history get lost. This is how atrocities are repeated or how they continue, or whatever it is. Nobody is helping anybody but the proletariat, the existing regime of nonsense, by taking these books away. And for all of these fragile people that are like, oh yeah, they said the word damn in that book, we need to take that one away. Dear God, I hope your kids aren't playing Grand Theft Auto. In fact,
Right.
I hope they're not on the internet at all. I hope they need to be sitting. Maybe they need the chalkboard to be writing things in the corner, because they sure cannot be introduced to anything that's happening real live in this time that we're in right now.
Well, that's because they believe they have to protect the children. That's what one of the mothers was quoted. We have to protect them.
From what?
From what? From reality?
From words on a page?
And just really quick, if anyone out there has middle school age kid, and I think like fourth or fifth, depending on the age that they are, their reading level, there is a youth adaptation of Born a Crime, Trevor Noah's book. Yeah. And so, my 12-year-old is reading it. And he's like, Mom, I'm like, read the damn book.
Well, and Flowboy, do you see what Flowboy here said? Unbelievable, all to make a certain sect feel comfortable about their horrific history. How many people had to read Mark Twain growing up? Anything by Mark Twain? I mean, yeah. Mark Twain was not a liberal guy, we'll just put it that way. He certainly was not viewing things from a lens of diversity and equity. And please don't tell me that he was a writer of his time. He was a racist. I'm going to say it. Don't shoot me. You can yell at me, but you can't shoot me. But to subject Black children to those books, but then to say that they can't read Beloved, or they can't read Mouse, they can't read Shel Silverstein's poetry.
Yep.
What are we saying? Who are we protecting?
And again, from what? From the reality of the world, so that we can keep making the same mistakes and the same crimes against Black people over and over and over again. Because if you can't read what the world's about, how do you learn? I grew up reading Richard Wright, James Baldwin.
The Born a Crime.
Born a Crime.
Yeah.
That's how I learned. I lived in a white community. So I read books that are being banned. It's how I learned about the world.
Absolutely.
It's definitely, and it goes, there are those, but it's like, because everyone, like now all the schools are running to equity. And then they're like, oh, we have to get more Black books into the schools. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, are they all going to be about slavery?
For fuck's sake. I mean, pardon my French, but yeah, I can't.
And so I said,
watch Amistad one more time.
And I said,
we cannot have the color purple as being the representative of what everything is right now. Like, we have to show some success stories.
Well, I'm sitting there looking at the middle school principal, and I'm like, do you know that there's an entire genre of Black sci-fi authors? And I'm like, and I bet you that people aren't white or Black, they're probably purple. And she was just like, oh, and I'm like, you guys are looking for books, and typically there's going to be some kids who love science, and there's a ton of kids who love sci-fi, right? And I said, it hasn't occurred to you just to like Google Black sci-fi authors? I'm like, because there's literally an entire genre of Black sci-fi authors. How cool is that? And I'm like, are you looking for books that just highlight Black people? Or are you also looking for books, and I always speak from the African American perspective, or are you looking for books that highlight, I said, because Black people do other things than pick cotton. Black people are other things than just activists. Mm-hmm. And I said, so are you looking for other things, other topics that would also show white kids, Latino kids, Asian kids, that Black people are just regular people and that they do regular things? Because the subject matter matters just as much. You change how, looking at a judge who could sit on the Supreme Court and referring to her as inferior. She's not in law school. She's a judge. She did something to get to that point.
She did not order her degree from Acme.
Right?
You know,
and I don't think she's been a judge for 6 months. So she did something to get to that point. So are we telling the stories? I mean, like, Mae Jemison, my God, that woman, besides the fact that she's an astronaut, that woman is accomplished in like 10 other things. So are you telling stories that begin to normalize? Are you looking for books that begin to normalize Black people? Not that they have to be the mathematicians who got the men out in space. They don't all have to be Obama. They don't all have to be media mogul Oprah. But are you looking for content that just, like, look, we're normal. We do everyday things.
Just people.
Because that's what matters. And that you're not looking for every single Black person to be this high achieving person and that they have to be extraordinary. And actually, I don't think that Black people are extraordinary in that vein. I think that I think that the white standard is lacking. Mm-hmm. And so, but just normalizing the everyday experience of Black people. Why don't you talk about the guy who actually created the Super Soaker and won a $1 million lawsuit because he really was a rocket scientist? And
I'm going to go back in time and take that guy out. Because you know how many times I've walked around a bend and been shot by some kid with a Super Soaker?
But the funny thing about him is he fought because he's like, no, you don't get to do this. And he literally is a rocket scientist. And so this thing that everybody knows about, most people don't know a Black man created it.
Right.
Because he was a rocket scientist. And he was just like, oh, this is really cool. I can create this thing. And, you know, so it's those books normalizing that everyday experience that people don't think that Latinos have, that people don't think that Black people have, that people don't think. It's just normalizing the everyday experience. And that's what's important when that's the equity, is the normal experience. And unfortunately, swinging back to Whoopi, her experience as a Black woman was not considered in that conversation.
People see her as a celebrity. They don't see her as being a Black celebrity. And that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a problem because we have to continually point out that she's a Black celebrity,
right,
in order to get people to recognize, oh yeah, maybe I'm not looking at this the right way. And
Yep.
That's a problem in and of itself, right?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be nice to be in a place where we could look at people and just value them for being people? But we're
Yep.
not there yet. And until we get there, we have to make mention of the fact that she is a Black celebrity that has had to push through to get to where she is. And again, was she wrong in what she said? If we're looking at what the Holocaust was, exactly, yes, she was wrong. Hands down, period. She had the facts, but she didn't understand them based on the context.
Right.
Now, if we look at it contextually, from her view as a Black American and how a Black American would see race, because race, the racial construct is so different here than it is elsewhere. Not saying racism doesn't exist everywhere. It does. But if you look at our racial construct, which is so terribly stupid, I believe, and I think she even said in the third apology on her tour of apologies, that she was viewing it from the lens of a Black woman in America.
Yes.
And that's valid too.
Within that context, absolutely.
Right.
But nobody sees that. They just see a Black woman.
They don't, well,
And that's it.
They just don't
they
wanna
don't
hear
beyond.
right.
They don't look beyond. You know, we had a situation in New Jersey several years ago. I'm sure Harmony will find it, of a young Black male athlete. He was a senior in a private school in New Jersey. Got a full ride, I think at like Princeton, Harvard, you name it. Like everybody wanted a piece of him. And he got in. I don't remember which school he chose. And somebody went on his Facebook page, and apparently he had made very discriminatory remarks about white people.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, whatever office he had, were gone. They pulled them. And he ended up going to, a small community college around here instead. And I remember when it happened, I wondered, why didn't anybody look at his Facebook page? Because he was Black? If he had been a white college, a white football player who was getting a full ride, would anybody have looked at his page? It was in the news. I mean, this poor kid made a terrible mistake and has paid a terrible price for it. I don't know what he said. I don't know the context, but I was amazed at how it hit the press.
Yeah.
It was incredible. If it was a white kid, I'm sure it happens all the time. You never hear about it.
Or if you hear about it, it's framed as he's really very sorry.
Right.
He's grown so much and moved beyond this. And then it's never brought up again.
No, never, ever.
But this probably will follow that other kid around for a long time, because once it's in print.
Oh, I remember it. And I'm telling you, this had to be 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. And I think, again, what's most unfortunate is the learning experience that has been completely kiboshed because somebody wanted to make drama. She's received death threats, actually. People are calling her anti-Semitic, of all people.
Right.
Whoopi Goldberg is not anti-Semitic. We don't give people the space to be people.
Yes.
As human beings, we are, in my opinion anyway, but, in reflecting on the fact that we are imperfect and every day is a learning day, I think anyway, we tend to hold ourselves to crazy standards. And I know I myself am very, very guilty of that. I do not like to make mistakes publicly at all. We need to remember that people that are in the public eye are still human beings. And they are going to make mistakes. There's a difference between Whoopi and, say, Chris Harrison. That's the guy from The Bachelor.
Yes. Yep.
Who, was defending the woman who went to the antebellum ball and all of this. I don't watch that ridiculous show, but I remember following the controversy of it. He was suspended for a bit and then he decided to step back from his role. He had the opportunity to take a leadership role and start a conversation. Instead, he doubled down and explained why what the woman did was okay and why what he was saying was okay. That is a very different scenario. And that went on for like a month before anything happened. Like Nikki said earlier, it takes months and months and months. So, you know, Robin, if for you, as I'm sure you've heard a lot of people in the Jewish community talking about this and saying what a terrible thing Whoopi did, or what she said, or what she is, or whatever. How do you discuss that with your friends?
It's interesting because most of my friends are not Jewish.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was waiting to see if I got phone calls, and I didn't get any. And I also found that within my own family, I was the one making the phone calls to get opinions. I think what happened with Whoopi, I don't want to say it's a non-starter, and I don't know the right word, but I think it was a stupid mistake. And I think that there are people out there who, when a Black person makes a stupid mistake, it's not a stupid mistake. It is the crime of the century.
Right.
I think that for my mother, my sister, my niece, who is an Israeli citizen and lives in Israel, we all came to the same conclusion that she made a terrible mistake. She spoke about something that she really had no true knowledge of. It was an opinion, and it was a wrong opinion.
Yeah.
If the opinion had been based on facts, as we said earlier, it's a whole different ballgame. But it was based really on facts she didn't have in front of her. As you said, she had the facts, she didn't understand them.
Yeah.
So for me, she apologized. If she was still walking around like a former president whose name I won't even speak, who talked about grabbing women's parts and has never once owned up to a recording that everybody has heard.
Mm-hmm.
If we can turn a blind eye to that, why can't we, again, it's a and I hate the expression teachable moment, but it's a teachable moment for those of us sitting out in the world who don't understand the difference between mistakes, racism, bigotry, bias, and just speaking out of turn.
Yeah. I like the way you said that, because it happens.
It does. It happens all the time. People make mistakes. She really, truly did not believe she made a mistake. But when somebody said, excuse me, that's not how it went down, she owned it immediately. And for that, I have nothing but respect for her.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually makes me a little bit more of a fan of hers, because sometimes
Absolutely.
I listen to her on The View and I'm like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
But, you know, I think making an apology in itself is a skill. I mean, there are ways to apologize and ways not to apologize. There are ways to own your shit versus just kicking the can forward. I think she did a great job of that. And I think people should be looking at the quality of that apology.
Absolutely.
Looking at how they handle things just in general in their own lives.
Absolutely. It was, as you said, it was eloquent. It was heartfelt. It came from a place of being genuine. She didn't, she's paying a very high price for an apology. And in my world, the way I was raised and the way I live my life, is apologies are a great bridge to healing.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the healing part? Once she's given the apology and now it's okay, you apologize, but you know what? I'm going to slap your hand for 2 weeks. Bad girl, go sit in the corner. What's the message to the world? Apologies are for nothing, let alone a heartfelt apology, where she then went and tried to educate herself as to what the facts really were. That's what has me furious. I'm angrier about that than about what she said.
Yeah, I agree. I think that she did a good job. And, I stand by Whoopi.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought of it that way, but I just get so hackled up because, again, we see worse happen every day. And we hear nothing.
Yep.
I don't know. Nikki?
But what about, while she's giving this sincere, heartfelt apology, which is apparently a really hard thing to do these days because people do crazy things and they give these sort of coy, kind of narcissistic apologies. I'm sorry that it was received that way.
I'm
Yes.
sorry if you
And-
felt that my
right.
words hurt you.
Right.
Right. And so then we have, who's that guy? Football dude, Bill Belichick, who can't,
Belichick.
but whatever, who can't text and let the shit fly that, oh yeah, we know we're supposed to interview a coach of color, but we're really just doing that for face
Checkbox diversity.
because
Yep.
we've already hired someone. And because I can't actually pay real close attention to the person I'm supposed to be texting, I text the wrong person.
I said the true story out loud instead of keeping it to myself.
And have y'all heard? Have y'all heard an apology?
No.
And
Have
we
you?
won't. Listen,
And there won't be one. There won't be one. It's a lawsuit instead, of course.
And this is like an NFL rule. And so the job has already been filled and you filled it and you haven't even interviewed the one person of color. He's confusing me because I don't know football though. He's a black guy, but he has a Latino last name.
Flores. Brian
Flores, right. So is he black and Latino?
He seems
That
black.
was two.
I mean,
That was two boxes they could have checked.
Yeah.
But
Go ahead,
this is
Robin.
just a highlight to what goes on in the world every day, where people don't have access to the media, where they can say, look at what the NFL is doing. It happens every day, everywhere.
Listen, the NFL across the board is problematic, period.
Mhm.
Nobody wants to talk about it because everyone loves America's sport. The NFL is bullshit. And we as Black people, first of all, need to be doing more to advocate for Black people who are playing football. Now, granted, they're making billions of dollars, so they don't care. But what I'm caring about is the generation of children that are sitting at home watching this nonsense, thinking that if they go out and they wear tight pants and run around in circles and knock things over real hard and can throw a ball, then they're going to be billionaires too. Meanwhile, their brains are getting smashed to bits and pulverized.
I do like the hand warmer.
What?
I do like the hand warmer.
What hand warmer? Oh yeah, I know what you mean, for the football guys wear. But they're doing this for sport. They are.
Don't you judge me, Robin. I have a Jewish friend.
Oh, here
One.
we go.
Apparently,
again.
she has one Jewish friend, and I'm like a half.
See? You're working your way up.
Back to football. Entertainment. Nikki always talks about the minstrel show, the black buck, the whole 9 yards. 75% of the league is Black. League's players are Black.
Ooh, how many owners are Black?
Head coach? What?
How many owners are Black?
I think it's zero.
It's zero.
Yeah, that
I
was
think
being
Jay-Z
sarcastic.
might be a tenth of an owner. I mean, and maybe that's the one drop rule at work. But at the end of the day, we need to say that this is a problem. But anytime I bring this up to Black people, I'm like running for my life because they want to murder me. And I am sorry. You can say and do all that you want, but when you see this is a system of racism that has been bundled up and says if we throw them enough money, it's going to be okay. And that's where we are with football. It's disgusting.
You know this, Misty. I read it, but I don't remember it. The black players get less for their concussion syndrome.
Correct.
Because their
They
brains
come in
are
as
inferior.
less intelligent to begin with.
What?
Oh, you
Yes.
didn't know that?
Oh yeah, this is a
Oh
big
yeah.
thing.
I know this much about football, so
Okay,
I
I
mean,
so
tried
I
to know
left off
nothing, but
yeah.
I left off at Joe Namath when he was wearing pantyhose. What can I tell you?
So yeah, so they're giving the settlement. Black players are getting less because they come in with less intelligence. Did anybody hear an apology?
What I did hear was that they were going to look to rectify the situation. So, I mean, are they climbing Everest to do it? Has it been taken care of?
What do they have to look for? So,
and is it retroactive? That's what I want to know.
but it's the same thing. It's like, so we can be extraordinary. We can dance, sing, and play sports for you, but we can't just be normal people who have a normal experience. Because if you view us as normal, then you can't. I mean, like, we have an inferior judge running for Supreme Court. Everybody else is just, food for fodder, and all of these other people. So she made it all the way to being a judge, but she's a less caliber. She has a less caliber in terms of her qualifications as all the other judges. We have Black men who can make billions of dollars, but dance monkey dance.
Oof.
Ooh.
Because you have an inferior brain.
You certainly can't throw a ball.
You don't get it. You don't need as much money because your brain, you came into the sport diminished. So the concussions, they didn't give you any diminishment. So you get less money.
Well, and let's talk about Black quarterbacks. Let's talk about Cordell Stewart. He was on the, what's his name? Bryant Gumbel. He was on the Bryant Gumbel show. Listen, I hate football, everything about it. When Glenn turns it on, we get into a fight because I hate it that much. I don't even like to hear it. But he was talking to Bryant Gumbel and talking about what it was like to be a Black quarterback. And even just to claw your way up into that position because the league had a policy, I'm not going to say, I'm going to air quote it because I don't think it was a written policy, obviously, but the expectation was that Black men could not string their thoughts together enough well to call plays. So this is what we're dealing with. And, once again, there are more Black quarterbacks now than there ever have been before, I'd suppose. But that's still not speaking to the problem that has been created when you have a league that is, I don't know how many teams there are.
And reiterated.
Yes. You've got one Black, what's he called? Coach. Yes. And that's Mike Tomlin. He's here in Pittsburgh. And let me tell you what these people here in Pennsylvania have to say about Mike Tomlin. Now, I personally, again, couldn't care less about Mike Tomlin as a coach. But the things they say about him as a human being even are unacceptable. And that's what we do. It's what we do with Jews when we hear somebody say that, they're running the banking sector or whatever that is. That is a microaggression. That is racism. We need to start calling this stuff out. Because if it's
But nobody complains about Russell Simmons and his fat card or whatever he has a debit card, and it costs money. Like it's supposed to be for those who can't get traditional banks, because now you which I've had my bank account for so long, I've been a part of my bank for so long, I didn't realize you get a credit check now when you go to get a bank account. We know that it is expensive to be poor. We know that. Mm-hmm. And so all of these companies have these debit cards where you can have your paycheck put on them and you can have, you can pay your bills with them, but they cost. You're paying this fee. And I'm like, But Russell, you're Black. Why do you need to do this? Why do you need to use Black people as a source for your ever-growing income?
I mean, it's growing.
And so it's sort of like, again, the thing that has always stuck out to me and has been quite enviable regarding the Jewish people is there's a strong sense of camaraderie and family.
Community.
Yeah.
It is community.
Yeah, my ex-husband.
It always comes back to that.
They always look out for, I don't want to say always, I mean, of course, there's probably some anomalies here and there, but there's a lot of coming
As a
together,
whole.
a lot of camaraderie. And honestly, and I'm just going to say it because it's the truth, the Black community was not allowed to do that.
Correct.
Since the moment they were brought to this country. And as a result, it's hard to find these community bonds. Even now, society works to divide us. And, you know, like 10 years ago, I didn't even see it that way because I was still bootstrapping it and, you know, I was still in the matrix. But if you stop and look at every single structure, well, I'm always in the matrix, man. I can't help it. But if you,
sorry, Robin.
For those of you that are new to the show, there's always a matrix reference, and it's always me making it. But in every piece, every societal structure, we've been separated. It's not been safe for us to come together. It's not been allowed, all of these things. And so when you hear somebody like, hard for me to vomit his name out of my mouth, but Tucker Carlson. when you hear somebody like that pig say, and I do have a plant name matrix too, it is very true, but when you hear somebody like him saying that the entire monolithic Black community is garbage because they refuse to come together and protect their own and take care of their own. Well, why is that, Mr. Swanson, who is inheriting the Swanson family fortune? I will never look at dinner the same way again. Who are you to say that? If you really wanted it to be different, Mr. Swanson Carlson vomit bag, maybe you should, rather than cast stones, take a look at the apparatus that you helped to support to keep us this way. I hate that guy. My cat is even disappointed that I had to say his name.
I'm still trying to recover.
I have 2 new plants, Shin Lee.
Oh,
Shin
well, I
and
can't
Lee.
see them, but you'll have to send a picture. All right, so real quick.
And yes, I have Asian relatives. Just throwing that out there.
Okay, so Track Eugene said something about Chelsea Crist. Other than she was dating that other football idiot, Antonio Brown. But I don't know much about her. So if you want to toss something up into the text, so that we know what you're talking about. But you know, he was a Pittsburgher, or at least he played for Pittsburgh. And
can you microwave?
I mean, he's got a lot of issues. And you know, thank you, Harmony. No, we cannot microwave him.
You could try. Good luck.
But I think that, you know, this is another example. They've known he's unwell. It doesn't take the guy that created the Super Soaker to be able to tell that Antonio Brown is unwell. But hey, he can still produce, so he's okay. It's exploitation.
It is.
And you say, oh, well, he had free will. He signed his own contract, blah, blah, blah. But will we allow a person that's impaired to sign a contract in the first place?
Because it makes for great viewing.
Exactly.
It's all about the numbers.
I mean, the man melted down.
But when we say that someone has free will, that's a loaded statement because we know that whites own the wealth in this country, and it's generational wealth. And a lot of what these players are trying to do, because I have a love-hate relationship with football, and now I have a high school football player.
I'm sorry.
Which it's so freaking expensive. Okay. So, because they keep growing. So, but they're trying to achieve something different. And I've actually met a few football players, professional football players that I've had more than just because I'm not a fan. And they are trying to do something different and be something different. Oh.
Wait,
so
that's not Chelsea Crist, though, is it? The person that jumped. I don't. Hold on.
Yeah,
look this up.
There was a former Miss USA
that I saw, but
who
I
committed
don't think...
suicide in New York City on Sunday. Apparently, she suffered from crippling depression.
Oh, different Crist, Kryst. I looked at the other one. Okay, yeah, we'll definitely need to talk about that in a minute. Go ahead, Nikki.
No, I'm just saying they have a talent, they have a skill, and oftentimes it is a leg up to get them through high school, to get them into college and beyond. And you're faced with choices that, once again, what is your experience? Sometimes you're faced with choices, not every player, that they change your circumstances. They significantly change your circumstances. So Simone Biles, and like Gabby, am I saying it right? Gabby Douglas?
Mm-hmm.
Look at what they had to do to be gymnasts. They had to live with other people. Again, it's your experience. You have to do this thing because it significantly changes your circumstance, but not just your circumstance. I think it's cliche to say that, Black men play professional sports, excuse me, to help out their families, but there is some truth to that.
100%.
And so you have this thing, you are this person who can not just change your life and your world, but you can change your mom's life, you can change your dad's life. Maybe there are some younger siblings. You have the ability to change your world. And if you do this thing and you do it really, really well, you can move to a completely different place. And if this is what you have to do and how you have to do it, I have a respect for that, because look at what's going on. I mean, football is football, and I think that the wealthy Black community should have a football team. They should start to be owners. There's enough money out there. But there is something to be said for that, because when you try to do things the right way sometimes, it still doesn't go your way when you're Black. You can do all the right things. You can cross all the T's and you can dot all the I's, and you can go into another language and cross all the T's and dot all the I's. But you're still going to end up being a judge.
You can be a wealthy doctor that supports the community in all the ways and still continue to get pulled over every day because you drive a nice car and you live in a nice neighborhood.
Right. You can get a job as the diversity and equity person and be looking for a house in your Porsche SUV, and then the company tell you they rescind the offer because you're like, what, you're too progressive, you're trying to change things too much.
Yeah, too progressive. You know how that goes. So can we circle back, because we've already been on for like 2 hours and I'm sure people really want to leave.
I got to get my kids.
But I definitely want to talk about Chelsea Crist, who is the former, well, she was a former Miss USA. She sadly, no.
She died of suicide.
Thank you, because, you know, sometimes when I'm talking quickly, I say the wrong words.
Yes, the correct expression is died of suicide.
Absolutely. And that's really important too, by the way, the words that we use when it comes to, hi, Robin, you're going to want this one. This is a good one. Welcome. But we have taken mental illness and stigmatized it to a point where people hide and they suffer in silence for so long.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one of those things. I want to do a show about invisible illness. It's really, really important to me. You look at somebody and you're like, oh, they're beautiful. Oh, they're talented. Oh, they have whatever. And we then, because of that, we minimize their struggle. And we say that even though, you know, they might be feeling sad, they should just like suck it up or, you know, do whatever. And that, in my opinion, is why people don't talk about it. And then we see something like this, where this woman dies by suicide. She is so broken in her heart and mind that she ends her life, or suicide ends her life, or however you phrase that. I'm still working on my words on this one. That, you know, even still, people are looking at her and saying, she was beautiful. She had everything. Why would she do this to herself? Rather than taking a look at the fact that she didn't have everything. She didn't even let her own mother know. Because we are forced to achieve. We cannot show chinks in our armor. We cannot say that we are having a bad day. And this is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Robin.
I had suffered a serious bout of depression for a very extended period of time, many, many years ago. And I still take medication for it, and I would never consider going off of it. My own mother had no idea. Nobody knew. It is just something you cannot, you can't even find the words for it. You cannot call up somebody and go, I'm depressed, or I'm feeling this way, because everybody gets depressed. Let's face it. Everybody has a bad day. You get depressed. You're sad. You're feeling the blues. But when you have depression where this is the way I describe it, you feel like your life, like you're swimming through pea soup and you hit a ham chunk and you go down and then you come back up. I know, hams and Jews. What can I tell you? It's the only thing I can come up with.
I mean, that's pretty serious.
Robin, this is supposed to be serious. I'm trying to keep.
I know. Well, I saw you laughing. It's your fault.
I'm literally envisioning Robin hanging on to a hunk of ham, and
That's
it's
me.
And then I was like, is it?
Chunk.
I was like, is it spiral ham? Is it?
No. There was
is
square
it
cut.
Is it a ham hock?
Yes, it was a ham hock. It was very
Grizzly.
salty too, which did not help at all. Trust
and
me.
then you were dehydrated on top of it.
It just sucked all around. But no, being serious.
Sorry, you guys.
That's quite all right. I can laugh at it now. But back then, I just, I worked. I was one of those people like this Chesley, I think her name was, could get up, go to work, put on a great show, go. Nobody knew how seriously depressed I was. I don't think I even understood it. And it's not always a chemical issue.
It's not
it's
actually.
An easy out. Trust me, that's a very
realizing
easy out.
more and more that it's not simply a
Right.
chemical.
It's not. A lot of it is genetic. A lot of it is predisposed. I don't have access to some of my family records, so I don't know. But I can tell you this, that it wasn't until there was one day where I woke up and I thought, damn, I woke up.
Mm.
And I really got frightened. And I thought, maybe I'll be lucky this week and maybe I'll get cancer and just die quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I could never tell anybody that. I was petrified I'd be hospitalized. I was petrified, people would minimize, you're having a bad day. I have those too. And it was finally when I called my mother because I got frightened.
Mm-hmm.
It just scared the hell out of me. I had a son. I was a single mother. Life was very, very difficult for me in those days. And it was my mother that said, we're going to go see somebody.
Mm.
Yay,
And
Mom.
Thanks, Blanche.
yeah,
And yay,
she
Robin,
was the
for calling
best.
your mom.
Yeah. And, you know, we did. I mean, I had a therapist, and I put on such a good act with my therapist.
Mm-hmm.
She knew I was a little depressed, but I would never have gone in there and say, oh, I want to die today, ever. If my mother had not said, I'm getting on a train and coming out and we're going together, so she could make sure that I told my therapist how I was feeling, I don't know what would have happened. And I had been feeling that way for several years. It wasn't just like, you know, I woke up one morning feeling lousy. So people don't understand. It's so hard to ask for help when you're feeling that way. It's so frightening for the person who's going through it. And it's so hard in the world that we live in to show your true colors.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to hear it. People do not want to hear it.
They don't. They don't. Robin, thank you. Wow. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for sharing that. That was huge.
Thank you.
That
Well,
was really huge because I do feel like a lot of people, I think, you know, they have those commercials on right now where the dude's like got bit by a rattlesnake, but he's still like, no, we're gonna hurt you. You know, and they're like, it's okay to ask. Stop making me laugh, Robin. Like, but I think that people have a very specific way that they think that depression looks.
Mm-hmm.
I think they think that people they stop taking care of themselves, or they don't have a clean house, or they're kind of, I think that there's a very specific way that they think a depressed person looks, or how they're supposed to act, or they're Debbie Downers. And I think that people don't realize that people get up every single day, not wanting to, but they're just on autopilot, and they go and they smile. And, you know, it's, I very much appreciate you sharing that. And I think it's definitely something, you know, just anyone who's experienced that, having the courage to share that so that someone else can hear it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. And, you know, somebody just read isn't genetics a chemistry brain issue. This is part of the problem, is that people have to define what your depression is.
Where it comes
It's
from.
not about defining what it is. It's about resolving it. You can get to the genetics, and yes, in some case, and genetics and chemistry are two different things, by the way. They really are.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the reasons why people don't talk about it, because people say, oh, it's genetics, oh, it's chemical. Oh, and I know this person probably didn't mean it that way, but it alludes to that there's something wrong with you. When you're already dealing with the fact that you know that something is seriously wrong with you.
And it puts you into a box, right? It's, oh, well,
Absolutely.
she has brain chemistry issues, so I'm just going to leave her over there in her chemistry pit of doom.
Right.
And,
I mean, there's situational depression. There's all different types of depression.
Right.
All different types.
Right. And
it doesn't,
go ahead.
It doesn't matter what type it is. What matters is that the stigma is taken away, so that someone like me can reach out and ask somebody, whoever they are, I'm scared. What do I do? With people who die by suicide, what happens is they develop tunnel vision, and they cannot see what I saw. They couldn't see that there's somebody out there, and all they can see is this and the end at the end of that tunnel. They literally, that is the total focus of what brings their end on so tragically, is they don't see anything other than an end.
Yeah, I think we have to get better as people at, you know, seeing things outside of our own framework, right? Like Harmony just said, normalizing everyday experiences.
Yep.
I never realized that I had anxiety. I was like, you know, situationally, I'm always the person that's right in there. I'm cool and bounce. I get shit done, whatever. But I don't sleep. And I don't sleep. And, you know, I come from a long line of non-sleepers. So I was just like, oh, yeah, this is my chemistry. Nikki. This is my family, whatever it is, this is who I am. And then, you know, I look at people with anxiety, and they're, you know, definitely different from the way I look with anxiety.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, this isn't anxiety. This is just the way I'm wound. And, you know, that's pretty cool. And I didn't realize until fairly recently that, I know one of the reasons why I don't sleep is because I problem solve when I'm supposed to be sleeping. And that is a component of anxiety.
Yeah.
You ruminate, your mind races, your brain is in that maze,
Oh, yeah.
trying to get out, looking
Yep.
for the cheese.
Yeah.
And so, I remember explaining it to a therapist once, and the therapist was just like, well, you know what? You're a high achiever, high functioning person, and that's just the way your brain works, and it's okay. And I remember thinking, shoo, because I thought she was going to tell me there's something wrong with me. Now, she didn't address any of my issues whatsoever, and that was a big deal. But what I came to find out upon doing some of my own work was that anxiety does present very differently in high achieving people.
Yes.
And thank goodness I learned that. Honestly, I think the pandemic would have crushed me not having learned that earlier on in my life. So, and yes, as Chesley had a high functioning depression, in that she was able to go out and work and, brush her teeth and floss and put her pants on and all of that stuff. But that's Nikki. Okay. Anyway, so at the end of the day, we have to recognize that there's no one prescriptive way people look and people act and people are. We can't assume that because somebody's standing next to us and they look healthy and they're smiling that they are.
Yep.
All comes back to empathy.
I always try and take the position when I'm out in the world, even in the supermarket. If I make eye contact with somebody, I always say hello and smile. That the mask has killed that. It's been a real bitch. But
well, don't you watch America's Next Top Model? You can smile. You can smile with your eyes.
Oh, don't even get me started on that show.
That's another show.
That's a whole nother show to get. That's a whole other 4-hour show. But it just that I want people to be seen. I always think if they're having a bad day and they know somebody saw them and smiled and made eye contact, maybe they're depressed. Maybe somebody saw me. Somebody knows I'm here. Mm-hmm. Because, we talk about not being seen and being othered. Depression is the ultimate.
For sure.
You are
I
invisible.
Yeah. I agree. And don't let anybody know because someone might catch it.
Yep.
Flow Boy says, scary and sad. We all need to do better with communicating with each other so we don't lose another soul from this illness. 1,000%.
See, and that's the whole thing. Mental health shouldn't be when it's not an illness.
Neither is women's health.
Illness, exactly. You refer to it as mental health.
It's a way to, again, minimize people, to otherize people.
Yeah.
Harmony says here, is killing people in my sleep a form of problem solving? Actually, yes. I have been told that this is a thing. When I'm super keyed up, I will. If I disappear for a while, someone had me committed, but that's okay. When I'm really keyed up, I have dreams about like I'm killing zombies. I'm flying my fighter jet out, and I'm like taking care of business. My dreams are very active and very aggressive to the point where I wake up like I have been living this. And that's how I know when I'm starting to spin and I need to like pull away and find that personal space. Glenn will say, I'm a bad sleep talker and I tell people to do things all the time that I really shouldn't say. I can't tell you how many times I've told him to stop breathing in my sleep. He must really love me, I'm telling you. But, I will say some things. Now, I'll wake up in the morning, I'll be like, hey, babe. And he'll be like, can't blame him. But again, if you can't work it out during the day, it's got to come out sometime.
Exactly.
And it's not necessarily unhealthy if you know what to do about it. If you go and grab your Kalashnikov afterward, that's not a good thing. But if you can work it out in your dreams and then say, oh, I see that this is becoming a thing and these are getting worse and I have to process things better. So I'm going to maybe remove myself from, society for a minute until I gather myself, whatever that looks like. That's the way I handle it anyway. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
And personal victory, Martin Reed said, high functioning compared to who? And that's important too, because even the label of high functioning in and of itself is a problem. You know, as I say all the time, we have a speech issue. We have a language issue. And our language just is not inclusive, and inclusive isn't even the right word. Our language doesn't create belonging.
No.
It doesn't invite people in. And that's a problem. And I think that, you know, through more and more conversations, we can, you know, hopefully get people to think about these things in a more broad-minded way.
Yeah.
Robin, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
for having me here.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and see, she's even got the ThoughtFLOW boogie going on.
There you go.
So, Ashley, thank you for joining us today. And you've been on for the duration. You must really love us. So, thank you, Ashley, coming and being here. And it's just important to all of us that we create communities. Let's see. Robin says Kevin Hines is phenomenal. Suicide prevention advocate. His story of surviving jumping off the that is a story.
Yes, it's an amazing story.
It's a hell of a story. Eugene, we do this every week. So next week we'll be on Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then the week after it'll be Friday. Thank you for joining us. I didn't think I'd seen you before. So if this is your first time, love it. Thanks for being here. I hope to see you again. And Robin will be back because we love her and she listens to us all the time.
That's true. I'm not only a participant, I'm a viewer.
You need a ThoughtFLOW t-shirt. All of the sources, like Harmony just said, she's reading my mind. Of course, we save them here on IG, but if you want a source or a book that we mentioned or whatever, if you check out our YouTube page, Harmony, you can put that in the link because I don't know which one it is. But if you want to reference any of those things, please check out our YouTube page. You can see it there. And again, everybody, Martin's, everybody that's come to play today, thank you for listening.
Martin.
It has been a marathon show, and I appreciate your being here. Nikki would appreciate it too if her signal didn't crap out and then she had to go pick up her kids. So we will see you. I know these kids,
They're
man.
doing everything.
Next week, Thursday night, 7 p.m. And there's a guest next Thursday. So hope to see you then. Take
Bye.
care,
Thanks for
everybody.
having me, Misty.
Thank you for being here. Sorry, we're leaving. We got to go. It's been like 2.5 hours. We can't talk all day.
I need to take a nap.
Oh, yeah. What a great idea.
There you
Bye,
go.
guys. Please be safe.
Bye, everybody.
It's crazy out there.